Okay, let's get started on part 2. Hold on. Okay, I think this is where I ended off last. In the 3 days since we signed the contract, Stale spent nearly every moment at my side, the perfect doting brother. Since he was originally a commoner, he still had quite a lot of reading, writing, and etiquette to learn, which had to be exhausting all of a sudden. But despite that, whenever he had free time, he'd rush to my side with a smile if I called his name. We did just about everything together, from reading to meandering throughout the castle grounds. I wanted to help teach Stale too if I could. My own education was thorough, of course, but I felt bad taking up even more of his time for tutoring. Plus, I didn't want to burden him with the memories of his mother. Whenever we were together, I tried to avoid the topic of mothers altogether. I really just wanted to do whatever I could to help him, but I had no idea how to accomplish that. I mean, you're only 8 in this timeline, so yeah. Hey, Stale, let's play tag together. I'll race you to the garden. I took off at a dash, trying to outrun the melancholy weighing me down when I thought about his plight. Wait a minute, Pride. That's not fair, Stale called after me. I was pretty fast, but when he wasn't holding back, Stale was always faster. Pride from playing tag with other kids, an activity I rarely got to enjoy. But after only a short way, I glanced behind me and couldn't find Stale anywhere. I slowed, looking around in confusion. Stale? Then I spotted him sprawled out on the ground and rushed back to his side to help him sit up. He was flushed red and gasping for breath, but he seemed okay otherwise. Still, something was obviously wrong. Somebody help, I cried. Stale's hurt. Guards rushed over while I called Stale's name over and over, but he merely mumbled and slurred incoherently. Jack scooped the boy into his arms and rushed him back to the castle. I hurried to follow, Lottie and the other maids fast on my heels. Stale had caught a cold. Oh, okay. Fortunately, it was nothing major, probably just fatigue, but I wondered if he'd been hiding it all day while overexerting himself for my sake. How had I failed to notice anything was even wrong until he collapsed right there before me? With Mother and Father busy with their work, only Uncle Vest, the seneschal, could come to check on Stale. It was the first time he'd ever met Stale, yet he looked at him so kindly, perhaps because they had the same position, the same lot in life. Uncle Vest swiped his blue hair out of his eyes and straightened, marching toward where I waited outside the sick room. He was dressed impeccably as always, yet he crouched down to meet me on my level. I'm sure he was tired after leaving his mother to come live at a faraway castle, Uncle Vest said, reaching out to stroke my hair. I remember that feeling well, but don't worry, he'll get better once he spends a few days resting. Uncle Vest, only in his late 20s, 2 years younger than Mother, and dressed like a handsome gentleman, was truly a wonderful man. I almost wished he'd been a love interest in the game! Yeah, that would have been cool, I'm sure. Well, no. The game didn't actually start for another 10 years or so. I won't forbid it outright, but you shouldn't go into his room. You could catch his cold, and we definitely don't want that, he said. He left me with those words and a concerned smile before returning to Mother. Only after he left did I realize how drunk the castle had gotten. The sun hung low in a sky rapidly deepening to blue and purple. In all the commotion, I'd completely lost track of time. I asked the guard to tell Lottie to come get me when dinner was ready, then returned to Stale's sick room. He slept peacefully, perhaps thanks to the medicine the doctor gave him. His face wasn't so pale anymore either. I sighed as I sat beside the bed, watching his face, relieved but still alert. This was really the love interest Stale that I knew. He had this exact same beautiful face as he did in the game. I took out my handkerchief and dabbed at the sweat on his brow, trying not to wake him. Stale tensed, eyebrows knitting together as though he was in pain or having a nightmare. In fact, it looked exactly like one of the cutscenes featuring the older Stale that I remember from the game. He was unconscious and groaning in his sleep as Tiara nursed him back to health. Oh! I gasped as the scene came back to me. In it, Stale, 10 years from now, had a nightmare about his past. Then, as now, he suffered from some sort of cold. Pride snuck into the sleeping boy's room. My slave sure has some nerve catching a cold without my permission. Dude, you can't control that! She said as she stared down at Stale just as I was doing. Now, but you are treating him a whole heck of a lot better now than in the game, and this is what, 10 years from now? So, yeah. Have you no shame being the commoner son of some commoner woman? You know, I wonder, if I order you to run laps around the garden until you drop dead, would you do it? Pride laughed as she wiped his brow with her handkerchief. Hey, you'll go back to normal, right? Your life belongs to me, you know. Hurry up and get better so I can play with you again, got it? My adorable little slave. Stale gasped for breath even in his sleep. He muttered to himself, but I couldn't remember what he said to himself in that scene. All I knew was that it sent Pride into a fit of laughter. Such a pathetic man. You're just like a little baby. You shameful, embarrassing, ugly little toy. You're my slave, you baby. No one needs someone like you. Mother and father, if they were still alive, even Uncle Vest, none of them need you at all. Your own mother probably wouldn't even have any use for you. All you ever do is make trouble for everyone. I really hate Pride now. Hopefully she can change that for the better for everybody. Because that's not cool. She continued to whisper to Stale's ear while he was lost in his nightmare. But because I pity you, I'll do you the favor of needing you. You're my slave, right? So we'll be together forever and ever and ever. In the game, that was when Stale awakened and for the first time revealed a bit of his painful past to Tiara, who had been taking care of him while he was ill. I did it again. I recreated another scene. Not really! No, you didn't. Only thing you did was keep an eye on him and wipe his face with your handkerchief, but you didn't say the same things that she did. Here in the present, outside the game, Stale groaned just like in that scene. I was busy wondering if my deepening forehead wrinkles would make me look more like father when he began muttering to himself. Mom. Tears glimmered at the corners of his eyes. I froze, chest going tight as I watched him cry out for his mother. How could I torture Stale when he's like this? You aren't torturing him at all. That was what Pride had done in the game when they were older. But then again, in the game, she tortured him for all his childhood, but still. You're not doing that. That's the difference. I couldn't comprehend it, yet I knew that other side of me lurked somewhere in my heart. What 7-year-old boy wouldn't miss his mother in circumstances like this? They'd only been apart for a few days. When I was in elementary school during my other life, there was always homesick kids who cried on the first night of a field trip. But it was worse for Stale. He would never get to see his mother again. He had no choice, no option, but to sign the contract and dedicate himself to his new life. He must have been holding back so much these past several days. Even though he'd studied hard and carved out the best life he could at this castle, the grief suppressed within him was still enough to make him ill. Maybe that is what made him sick? I don't know, but I mean, you could technically take him with you to see his mother, so he could have some kind of, at least see her again one time, at least. But that's up to you and your family, essentially. He was just a child, but strangers had taken his whole life from him, and he had no choice but to endure it. Then again, you also said that this is how the world works in this world, essentially. So, to you, this isn't normal, but to everybody else, it is. Yet in the time we'd been together, I hadn't once seen Stale complain, cry, or even scowl. The more I thought about it, the tighter my chest felt until I couldn't stand it anymore. I can't do this again. Stale's keeping everything inside him. I can't be the one who starts crying so easily. I could rationalize like an adult, but I was in the body of a child. The emotions overwhelmed me. I hung my head, but I couldn't tear my eyes away, and the tears spilled out before I could stop them, dropping right on... Girl! Why are you leaning that over him so much? The more I tried to force myself to move, to bear all the sadness, to keep the tears inside, the more the emotions poured out, until the tears turned into outright sobs. Stale squeezed his eyes tight and started to open them. I gasped and tried to jerk away, but it was already too late. Stale was blinking up at me. Pride? He didn't push or demand answers, but I knew he was confused and curious about the sight before. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry. Oh boy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to see me breaking down like this, and I'm sorry I made you play tag, and I'm sorry I didn't notice you were sick. But then again, you said he was hiding it, so of course you might not have known if you weren't paying attention too much. And I'm sorry I took you from your mom. But that's not your choice. You didn't have a choice in that. Your dad did that. And I'm sorry I couldn't save the two of you. I'm sorry I can't do anything to fill the hole in your heart. The more I thought about it, the less I knew where to start with my apologies. All I could do was desperately force that one I'm sorry after another in a voice that had gone hoarse from sobs. Stale just lay there watching me, fully awake now. A combination of his own sweat and my tears dampened his face. What do you mean? He asked. The question he finally landed on made my heart ache in my chest. What do you mean? I thought. Anything I said then would only hurt him. Besides, I wasn't seeking his forgiveness. How could I? But when I thought about how things would be if I didn't remember my past life, when I thought about all the horrible things I would have done to Stale, I just couldn't hold back tears back. I'm sorry. I can't be a source of strength in your life. And I didn't notice how you felt. I'm so sorry. I managed to get that much out before I completely broke down again. I folded my arms atop him and leaned all the way forward, hiding my face. Why did you do that on him and not in the bed? But whatever. He must have been burning up from his cold. The warmth radiated through the sheets when I rested on him. I shifted to bury my face against Stale's shoulder, then continued my sobbing there. He flinched at first, then gently set his hands on my back. It was hard to tell which one of us was the older sibling in this state. Stale was the one who needed comforting, and yet here he was comforting me instead. The shame of my failings, both as an older sister-in-law and as the crown princess, burned hot inside me. Stale said nothing, just held me. Maybe he was trying to think of what to say to a pathetic older sister who'd caused him so much worry. 10 years from now, I would become the evil, nefarious queen and bring this kingdom to ruin. No, you're not. Not if you keep trying not to. I mean, so far you've changed it. Because your parents are still alive, and you haven't treated Stale in any horrible way, shape, or form, and you don't have him under the fealty contract, so you've already changed things a lot. I didn't yet know if the person to stop me would be Stale or Tiara or one of the other love interests. As helpless and pathetic as I was, there was only one thing to say in that moment. If I become a wicked queen, then I want you to kill me. Kill me before you and your mother, and both of my parents and Tiara and everyone else in this kingdom, before even a single one of them falls into misery. That was all I managed to say, then my voice gave out from all the crying. I slipped into an exhausted sleep against him. By the time Lottie and Jack came to fetch me, Stale was asleep too. It must have been a shock to Lottie and Jack to find the princess in bed with a boy I had no blood relation to, even if we were both children. Half asleep, I muttered and mumbled as Jack scooped me out of the bed and into his arms. I roused a bit as he carried me back toward my room, enough to feel embarrassed by the whole ordeal. Voice thick with sleep, I begged him and Lottie not to mention any of this to my parents. Of course, Your Highness, they both replied with small chuckles. All the more I realized just how foolish I'd been to never notice the kind people I had all around me this whole time. Not before I regained the memories of my past life anyways. Stale made a full recovery a few days later. With his doctor's permission, he returned to his vigorous school studies and etiquette lessons. However, whenever it was time for his breaks, he would come visit me. Neither of us ever spoke about the night I visited him while he was sick. Perhaps sick as he had been, Stale didn't even remember it. I'm assuming he remembers it. The reason didn't matter to me. I knew he wouldn't have a clue how to respond to my apology. Plus, I definitely preferred it if he just forgot how shameful his older sister had acted in front of him. I mean, I'd asked a 7-year-old to kill me. The pride I knew from the game was clearly still a part of me. I could never bring myself to go back to Stale's bedroom to see him after that. I tried to just keep myself busy instead. One day after finishing lunch, I took Stale to visit Father between lessons. Apparently, Father had something to give him. These are special circumstances. You can't mention this to anyone, even in the castle, Father warned us, then handed Stale a single sealed envelope. When Stale opened the envelope and scanned the contents, he choked back a shout of surprise. His eyes went wide, mouth falling open as he gazed at a letter from his mother. Oh! Pride is the one who asked for this, Father said. We already promised to send your mother compensation from the castle coffers, but now she'll receive a lump sum once a month. When the delivery is made, she'll be able to send a letter back to the castle, but you'll only be able to write back to her once a year on your birthday. Father and other castle officials would review Stale's letters, of course, and he could never speak about any kind of royal affairs to his mother. Well, obviously. Stale's mother agreed to these conditions. Father told us, although he would probably have to repeat that part again. Stale had burst into tears before he could even finish. He clutched his mother's letter against his chest and wailed. Even I, standing behind him with my hands on his shoulders, flinched back. I never imagined him being the type of kid who could cry so loudly. He must have been trying to hold back so much still. I had asked Father if he would let Stale visit his mother, but he rejected the idea, which came as little surprise, yeah. But that led me to the idea of letters. I had things like the internet and social media in my past life that allowed me to stay connected with faraway family members, even if we weren't meeting in person or exchanging phone calls. I hoped letters could do the same for Stale in this world. Their correspondence couldn't become a regular thing, but at the very least they could hear from each other and perhaps even connect, if only a little. I'd begged Father over and over to allow it. Once I framed the idea in a political context, mentioning how important it was for the ruling family to be exposed to unfiltered voices from the commoner class, he finally considered my idea. Prime Minister Gilbert seemed a bit troubled by the proposal, but once we received permission from Mother, he laughed and said, "Such great character it takes to be queen. The two of you are both very open-minded." It seemed like Father bit his tongue at that little quip, but I couldn't tell. Anyway, everything worked out in the end, so that was all that mattered, right? I stroked Stale's hair as he cried. He turned suddenly, pulling me into a tight hug. Oh yeah, because he did mention that you were responsible for this. Stale had always accepted my displays of emotion, but this is the first time he ever initiated contact like this himself. Maybe he truly accepted me as a sister. He stifled his hitching sobs, letting out only little grunts now and then. I hugged him back, but the warmth spreading through me had nothing to do with physical contact and everything to do with Stale finally seeming happy. Mother and Father and I, and your other mother too, we all love you very much, I said. He cried even louder, his face still buried in my dress. Father just smiled at the two of us. Stale, my younger brother-in-law, I could only hope that he would love Tiara in the same way. Girl, you're still keeping to the idea that you are going to essentially end up alone in this situation. At least, hopefully alive, obviously. But, yeah, this is going to be interesting. Because this is giving me, I'm the villain, shoot. What was the name of it? All roads lead to doom or something like that. This is what it's giving me, essentially, where she thinks she's that she's helping the love interest, and then she ends up with everybody loving her instead! While I held him, I stared out the window and let my thoughts drift to the sister I had not yet seen. Stale never let go of that letter, even when he calmed and returned to his room. I feared the gesture would only make him ache to return home even more so, but he appeared promptly when called for dinner and seemed in good spirits. However, that look on his face was something new. Neither melancholy like when we first met, nor the bright and happy smile I saw after he first arrived. He looked more like the Stale of the game, calm, quiet, somewhat calculating, but had to be imagining that, right? After that, Stale also stopped calling me elder sister and pride as often when we were in public, and instead chose to address me as Your Highness. The idea that he would grow more distant or even come to despise me like in the game burned as it sank in and a cold dread seeped through my blood. In 10 more years, I will receive my punishment. Girl, I don't think he's going to come to despise you. I mean, you just gave him a way to talk to his mother, even just once a year. You did a lot for him already. You are not like the pride in the game. So he's not going to despise you unless you do something crazy. Stale Royal Ivy. I repeated that name in my head over and over again, making sure that I had it memorized. Never in my life had I so despised a special power I was born with. Mom was all I had left after Dad died, but she was a kind woman, so I lived a happy life with her and my friends in town. Mom would always brag that my special power was an extremely rare one, but all I really wanted it for was to help her. We weren't wealthy, so the only words I could read and write were the ones... Oh, this is Stale's point of view. Okay. For a second, I thought this was pride. I was like, why am I... What's going on? We weren't wealthy, so the only words I could read and write were the ones my mom taught me, my own name. Things weren't easy, but with my power, I could finally work someday and maybe improve our lot in life. Mom and the neighbors even told me how I'd grow up to be someone important since I was such a fast learner. Their words filled me with pride, but I never could have imagined the course my life would take, and how I'd have to leave home to become someone important. When the castle's messenger said I'd be the next generation's steward, I had no idea what he meant. It sounded amazing, and for an instant, hope bloomed in my chest. I turned to Mom and saw all the color drain from her face. Dread dropped heavy into my stomach as the man told me I would be adopted and never see my family again, never see Mom again. No, I don't want to leave Mom. She's the only family I have. She only has me, and I only have her. Immediately, I wanted to use my power to teleport me and Mom away from here, but she stopped me before I could act. I guess she knew you would probably do something like that. There was no disobeying an order from the castle. My refusal would be a serious crime, and my whole family would pay the price. I didn't have a choice. Still, when they told me I only had 1 day before I would report to the castle, I couldn't think of anything but escaping together with my mom. Then we received a 2-week postponement from the prince consort himself. Mom took time off work. We spent every moment of every day together over those 2 weeks. She managed to keep smiling during the day, but at night after I went to bed, I heard her stifled sobs coming from the other room. I mean, of course she's going to be losing her baby boy, and she's not going to get to have any contact with him anymore. Of course she'd be upset. I don't want any money, she said. Just please don't take Stale away from me. She covered her mouth with both hands so that she could cry without waking me, but I knew, and I'd never forget it for the rest of my life. When it was time for me to leave, neither Mom nor I shed a single tear. I soaked up her parting words, doing my best to keep a smile on my face like she always did. Then I told her to take care of herself and her health, and I'd always love her no matter how much time passed. As the carriage rolled away, Mom faded to a faint shadow in the distance. Then she shrank even more as though she'd collapsed to the ground. I'm sorry you had to say goodbye to your only son while he was in handcuffs. I wanted to tell her, but I never got the chance. I couldn't get that image of Mom out of my head even once I arrived at the castle, and I couldn't bring myself to properly greet His Royal Highness either. Even the threat of death that loomed over me for disrespecting the prince consort wasn't enough to snap me out of my stupor. Trapped in the storm of my turbulent emotions, all I could do was try to stay standing. Even before all this, I was never very good when it came to things like how to express myself. I never really bothered trying to show my emotions on my face. It felt like too much effort just for the sake of other people. Mom always knew exactly how I was feeling, and my friends didn't seem to care either way. Of course, in certain circumstances, I would smile like anyone else, like when I got to be with someone I liked, or when someone gave Mom work or something. Smiling in that kind of circumstance would make life easier for Mom and me, I knew. But here, in front of the prince consort, I just couldn't muster the energy to force a smile. Then there was Princess Pride. There were rumors in town that the crown princess had grown up spoiled. They said that unlike the queen and prince consort, she was quite the selfish young princess. My first impression when His Royal Highness introduced me to Princess Pride was simply that she was beautiful. Red waves of hair framed her face. Her skin was so smooth, her lips bright pink. She stood so elegantly, so poised, that I could hardly believe she was only a year older than me. Only the sharp, upturned corners of her eyes gave any impression of cruelty. His Royal Highness explained who I was and why I was in handcuffs, but Princess Pride was clearly disturbed by the shackles. I just kept my eyes on my feet the entire time, avoiding her judgmental gaze. If I would be spending the rest of my life in her service, I didn't want to be her thinking I was glaring at her or something. The idea of the princess hating me was too terrifying to risk. But then Her Highness reached out and took my hand, introducing herself so kindly. It didn't stop me from worrying that the friendliness was just an act, though, and the more I thought it over, the more the distrust inside me grew. Ah, okay. Of course he would be a little nervous about that, thinking that she was against him, because, it's the princess. They led me to a room, and I lay curled up in bed much too big for me, though I certainly had no hope of sleeping. When I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's tear-stained face, and my heart ached. Stale, I'm coming in. I jolted up when Princess Pride entered the room. I couldn't imagine what she'd want with me. Honestly, I would have preferred to be left alone, but I couldn't offend the princess like that. Princess Pride, I said, is there something you need from me? What could she want from me right now? Starting tomorrow, I'd be forced to serve by her side for the rest of my life. Why does she want to steal the little time I have left to myself? The longer these thoughts swirled through my head, the angrier I became, but I swallowed my irritation down. I could never let her see those feelings. I wouldn't dare offend the princess now. I'm sorry to bother you so late, she said. I simply had to speak with you before you signed the contract tomorrow. She approached me slowly like an animal she feared startling. Why wasn't she just barging in as was her right? None of this made any sense. The crown princess didn't need to be nice to someone like me. She didn't need to talk to me at all. She could simply wait a day and then command me as she willed. I just couldn't figure it out. The crown princess wants to speak with me, I said, cocking my head. Tell me, Stale, she said. You want to see your mother, don't you? What? My heart leaped into my throat. I stared at Her Highness, choking down a cry of yes. I do want to see her. I want to see her more than anything. I'd do anything for a chance to see my mother again. All I wanted was to see how she was doing and tell her I was okay. Her Highness wore a strained kind of smile as she looked at me. Then she reached into her dress, and in the darkness I could just make out the shape of a key clutched in her hand. What's that? No, it can't be. Why would the crown princess have such a thing? If she truly held the key to my handcuffs, why would she show that to me? Surely she realized that I could take it by force and escape any moment. Yet every time she spoke, she only added to my confusion. It's the key for those handcuffs, she said. I snuck into Father's study and borrowed it. Now you'll be able to run away. She's helping me escape? But why? For a moment, I wondered if this was all just some cruel prank. She must have known I couldn't just leave. I can't do that, I told her. It was Princess Pride whose mouth fell open in surprise this time. It seemed she really did mean to help me run away. Why not? Was she dumb or something? Was the royal family completely oblivious to what they put people like me through? Well, her, yes. Anger threatened to well up inside me at the thought, but I stuffed it down and instead told Her Highness about my mother and why I couldn't just leave. Still, it was hard laying it out all out so plainly. I kept seeing that image of Mom crying in the back of my mind, and tears stung my eyes the longer I spoke. No, I mustn't cry. I have to be strong just like Mom. She always managed to keep smiling no matter what. I can't let any of the royal family see me acting so weak. I was sitting up and gripping my pants. My hands curled tighter into the fabric as I continued speaking and holding back the tears. And I know they'll just pick another kid if I manage to run away, I said. I have a friend whose only family is his little sister, and he has a special power like me. I don't want him to end up here instead of me. That would only make things all the more painful for Mom and me. Instead, maybe I could just act more and more helpless until Her Highness gave in and let me see Mom. What if I just stop holding back and cry as loudly as I want? If she really was just a dumb but nice person, there was a chance she'd grant my wish. Rumor had it she used that sweetness to convince her father to dote on her. Maybe I could turn it around and use it against her? Oh. A wicked plan began to take shape in my mind. I snuck a glance at the princess, trying not to get caught as I did. The moment I saw her face, I abandoned my scheme entirely. Okay. Princess Pride looked absolutely stricken with grief. I flashed back to how Mom looked when she said goodbye. When we'd said goodbye, the caged-in grief, the strength it took for her to hold back what she was feeling. I saw that in Princess Pride now, the painful concern for someone else. For someone else? For me? I was more shocked by the sight than anything else, but I instantly knew I wouldn't be going through with any plans to manipulate her. How could I trick someone like her into helping me? Thank you very much for thinking of someone like me, I said. I'm glad you'll be my older sister, Princess Pride. It's an honor. But I don't need that key you have, so please go back to your room. I'll see you tomorrow. Just leave me alone already. What can you do for me? Nothing. There's nothing you can do to help me. Absolutely nothing. Suddenly, Princess Pride pulled me into a hug. At first, I simply froze. Why would the princess hug me, and why would she do it with such force, and why was this country's crown princess so close to me in the first place? Why was this girl crying so hard? Part of me still believed it was all a joke or a prank of some sort, yet I heard her sniffling and wiping at her tears. If this was an act, it was a very convincing one. I promise I won't cause you any more suffering, she said, mid-sob. I'll make it so everyone in this kingdom, including you and your mother, can spend each day with a smile on their faces. I swear it, as long as I live. My head felt light. None of this matched anything I'd ever heard about the princess. In town, everyone said she was spoiled and foolish, a brat unfit to serve as the next queen, yet here she was talking about the well-being of all her citizens, even me. She couldn't possibly be the self-absorbed, empty-headed princess everyone described. The Princess Pride before me seemed so dedicated to working for the citizens of Frisia, a true crown princess indeed. Something warm welled up in my chest, my vision blurred. I hadn't even felt this way when I had said goodbye to Mom. A knock rapped against the door, and Princess Pride, her eyes now puffy from crying, stepped away from me. Only when she wiped the tears from my cheeks did I realize I'd been crying too. I'm sorry to keep you up so late, she said. Good night, Stale. I hope you get a good night's sleep. She looked like she could start crying again at any instant, yet she smiled at me as she spoke. Why? Why are you being so kind to me? I wanted to ask, but I just couldn't get the words out. All I managed to do was watch her as she left my room and disappeared down the hall. The next day, I was supposed to sign the subordination contract, but I was still reeling from the previous night. I hid in my bedroom all morning. I couldn't see the princess again, not after the moment last night. It should have scared me to skip 2 meals in a row like that and possibly anger the royal family. But I felt more confident today that they would forgive me for something like that. I used time to gather my thoughts. The despair that overwhelmed me just yesterday wasn't such a heavy burden today. Maybe I'd simply accepted my fate. Maybe it was that late-night talk with the princess and the revelation that she was far kinder than the rumors suggested. Maybe it was simply the tears of relief I'd shed the night before. Whatever the cause, I felt lighter, even with those shackles still binding my wrists. When I attempted to smile, it emerged easily and naturally. Her Highness was nothing like the princess I'd heard about in town. Incredibly enough, she cared about people like me, people like my friends and family. Her compassion was nearly a liability, but at least I felt like I understood her now. We were nearly the same age, and my older friends were a lot like her. Strange as it was to comprehend, she would be the next queen, and I would be her seneschal, the second highest authority in the kingdom. Perhaps someday, if I stayed in the princess's good graces, the two of us could change Frisia when we ruled it. At the very least, I might just be allowed to see Mom on my own, since there would be no one left who could tell me no, so long as Princess Pride allowed it, of course. Becoming queen could still change her. It could turn her into a selfish, authoritarian ruler, but if I kept on her good side, maybe I could influence her to change some of the laws and rules around here. Toward that end, I also needed to keep Her Majesty, His Royal Highness, and Princess Tiara on my side as well. I couldn't possibly predict who Princess Tiara might marry and what the Prince Consort would feel about me, but if I had all those others as allies, I could still make this work. Princess Pride, the future Queen of Frisia, was the most important ally of all. I would use my position as her assistant in whatever ways I could, stay by her side, and ensure I earned her highest favor. It didn't seem like it would be hard. I liked her already. She'd gone and stolen the key for those handcuffs from me, and even cried when I explained why I couldn't use it. Not to mention those things she'd said to me. I promise I won't cause you any more suffering. I'll make it so everyone in this kingdom, including you and your mother, can spend each day with a smile on their faces. I swear it for as long as I live. I really believed she meant those words. Okay, I've made up my mind. I'll work hard to stay on Princess Pride's good side. I believed I could do it too. As vain as it might sound, I was pretty popular back when I lived in town. Both the boys and girls took a liking to me. Since I knew Princess Pride wasn't the selfish person of rumor, I knew I could win her over by playing the role of the good boy, deserving of all her praise. For the day that I could see Mom again. Someone knocked on the door, interrupting my musing. It was almost time to sign the contract. Princess Pride was waiting for me when I arrived in the chamber set up for the signing. Her worried expression eased when I greeted her. The minister began the contract procedures. The shackles made it awkward when it came time to sign my name, but we all made it through the ceremony. By the end, my heart was racing. I could physically sense the new bond between Princess Pride and me. Someone removed my shackles, and I rubbed my wrists, which felt lighter than ever before. Then the Prince Consort, or rather, father, placed his hands on my shoulders. Let's be a happy family together from now on, my son, he said. I paused for a moment as those words sank in. I was a member of the royal family. Me! I smiled back at father, careful not to seem rude like yesterday. Starting today, you're to live as royalty, doing everything in your power to assist Pride and the government of this country, he told me. Father beamed, and I tried to return the smile. The moment he let me, I ran over to Princess Pride. Smile. Make her proud of me. Proud of you. I'll be the perfect assistant and the perfect brother-in-law. I hope the two of us do well together. I promise to protect you as well as our younger sister, I said. Just as I expected, the princess responded with a smile. Yes, I can do this, I thought, but the next words out of her mouth caught me completely off guard. Thank you, Stale, she said, but since we're family now, you don't have to call me princess. I mean, I can understand her saying that, considering if you're siblings, you don't have to be so formal with your family, except out in public, obviously. But then you can be, less formal out in private, essentially. But since we're family now, you don't have to call me princess. Can you call me Pride instead? Mother's assistant, my uncle, addresses her without any title. What? Don't address her formally? Even though we've only become family just now? Sure, the seneschal, or steward as I was now, could address the queen informally, but that came from years of mutual trust. An assistant should call the crown princess your highness or Princess Pride. As her younger brother-in-law, I should have called her elder sister, but if Princess Pride was against all that, I had to follow her wishes, even if it felt strange being so familiar with the princess, especially considering all that happened the night before. I stumbled over my words, tripping over the strangeness of the whole idea and feeling ever so shy. I suppose I'd called older girls by their first name before, but none of them were princesses. Not to mention that she was so beautiful and kind and compassionate. Your Highness. The Prime Minister, who was there as a witness to the ceremony, turned his sharp gaze on the two of us. Ostensibly, he smiled at us, though his eyes were strangely cold in comparison. I shifted under his attention. Prince Vest, the seneschal, may refer to Her Majesty by her first name, but before commoners, he addresses her as Your Majesty or Elder Sister. To be honest, the Prime Minister's words came as a relief. He was right. Though I'd never heard Her Majesty, never heard Mother speak with the seneschal before, I knew that was the proper way for him to address her. I was glad the Prime Minister was the one clearing up the confusion here before I blundered into some sort of mistake. My relief lasted only an instant before Princess Pride once again made a pronouncement that left me bewildered. In that case, please call me elder sister around others, and Pride when we're alone. We're family after all, so that makes us equals. You still want me to call you Pride? And what do you mean by equals? To the whole world, we were master and servant now with the contract signed. Yet Pride went on insisting I could address her like we were on equal footing. I stuck down my surprise in time to shake Pride's hand. I even managed to call her elder sister as I did, but inside I felt just as perplexed as the adults around us looked. While Father and the Prime Minister were speaking to each other, I was busy trying to figure out whether I'd really be able to call my sister Pride when we're alone. However, I had a little trouble getting through it the first time. Right after we signed the contract, Her Highness gave me a tour of the castle library. I tried my best, but ended up adding a quiet Your Highness to the end of my sentence, so I wasn't sure if she heard it or not. The second time, I accidentally blurted out, "Your Highness," without thinking. The princess just smiled and said, "You can call me Pride." I don't think she'd get mad about it. She'd probably, as long as you don't do it too often. Then she added, "It's nearly time for dinner, so let's go back now, Stale." On the 5th time, I made it as far as Pride, and the princess smiled shyly. "Pride," she corrected me. The time after that, I managed to say her name correctly as we exchanged our goodnights and headed to our separate rooms. Then there was the 8th time. "Pride," I stammered. It was a bit clumsy, but the princess still smiled and invited me to join her in enjoying the nice weather out in the garden. And then came the 15th time. Why are you keeping track? "Pride," I said without any hesitation or faltering. Even I was surprised to hear it, but it seemed I really did see this girl and my sister as simply Pride. Of course, I did things other than try to learn her name after signing the contract. I also had to start learning reading, writing, and etiquette before moving on to math and Frisian history. I absorbed an onslaught of information, but I enjoyed working through all these new ideas. Plus, Pride and I often had our lessons at the same time, though we had different teachers. I asked mine about what she was studying. It gave me a little more insight into her. The teacher seemed to have a high regard for Pride's intelligence. Apparently, she picked up new subjects pretty quickly, even compared to other nobles. Your own memorization skills are quite impressive, considering you started with no education at all, Stale," the teacher said. I wasn't sure how I should respond to that. It's a compliment. It's a compliment. No one would be surprised if someone like me, Pride's assistant and younger brother, wasn't as smart as the crown princess, but some part of me wanted to catch up with and possibly surpass her. Better than having her tutor me. I shuddered at the mere thought. Life at the castle kept my days and my mind busy. I did my lessons, tried to address Pride by her first name, memorized all the things I needed to learn to serve as her assistant. But at the same time, I was always calculating. Was I saying the right thing? Was I doing the right thing? If Pride offered me help, how could I turn her down without getting into trouble? And more loomed on the horizon, such as the fencing lessons I knew they'd want me to take someday. And whenever I paused long enough to wonder how Mom was doing, my chest clenched around an old familiar pain. 3 days into my lessons, I woke up with my head pounding from all these conflicting thoughts. No, I still have so many things I need to focus on. I can't just stay in bed. I'll study a lot today so that I can see Mom as soon as possible. I just have to tell everyone I feel fine. No, dude, you're not. This is when he got sick. It took all my energy to act normal during my lessons that day. Most of the information just went in one ear and out the other. I'll have to repeat all this on my own later, I realized, but there wasn't much I could do about it except keep trudging along onward. I headed out to the gardens, where I promised Pride I would meet her, trying my best to keep my legs steady as I walked. Being around her always eased my mind a bit. She would greet me with a smile, laugh at the silliest little things, and say how much she enjoyed just being with me. It always reminded me of being with Mom. I knew once I was with her, I'd feel a lot better. I ran into Pride before I even made it to the garden. She'd finished her lessons for the day, too. She greeted me with her usual bright smile. Even in my exhausted state, I couldn't help reciprocating the gesture. "Hey, Stale, let's play tag," she said. "I'll race you to the garden." Without another word, Pride broke out into a run. I chased after her, but quickly lagged behind. I have to catch up. I have to be faster. Faster at tag, faster at studying, faster at growing up, faster at everything. Dude, you're not going to be faster at growing up. I hate to tell you that. Stale? Suddenly my vision blurred to white. I couldn't seem to open my eyes at all. You passed out. Somewhere outside me, Pride was screaming. I could hear her, but I couldn't make out the words as I swam through hazy incoherence. What am I supposed to be thinking about? Mom? I was dreaming. Mom and I were together. She had her back to me while she made dinner just like always. Hey, forget about dinner. We're finally together, so let's talk. How have you been, Mom? I've learned so many new things, Mom. Mom, the prince consort is actually a nice man, and Pride's nothing like all the rumors, Mom. Mom, are the townspeople treating you well? He's always repeating Mom, and each sentence he says in this dream, he says Mom. Mom, you have enough to get by, right? Mom, you're not still crying, are you? I grabbed at the bottom of her skirt, and she finally turned to look at me. Just wait, dinner will be ready soon, she said with a smile. Oh, thank goodness, she's smiling. But even as the thought hit me, Mom stopped her cooking and sank to the floor, breaking it down into sobbing. Oh, here we go. I reached out for her. Don't cry. I'll come see you again, Mom. I'll work really hard. Mom, are you listening to me? Hey, Mom. Mom. And she was still crying. Mom was still standing there crying. Something trailed down my face, one heavy drop at a time. My eyes were still closed, but consciousness returned slowly, and Mom faded away just a figure in a dream. For some reason, the sound of crying didn't fade away with her, though, as though I'd used my power to teleport back home. Yeah. Don't cry, Mom, I'm right here with you. But when I opened my eyes, it was Pride and not Mom crying atop me. Pride? Am I still dreaming? So that wasn't Mom crying. Why am I here now? Why is she crying? I struggled to steady my swirling thoughts, let alone speak. All I could do was stare up at Pride, who seemed nearly overcome with emotion as she watched over me. And when she finally spoke, she offered deep remorse. I couldn't make any sense of it at all. Why was she crying so hard again? That question stuck in my mind as I pieced together my thoughts. What do you mean? I asked her. At this innocuous question, Pride pressed her lips together, tightly together, and sobbed anew. Why does she look like she's holding so much back? I'm sorry. I can't be a source of strength in your life, and that I didn't notice how you felt. I'm so sorry. Her lips trembled as she forced the words out. Pride collapsed on top of me and pulled me into a hug. Her body, scent, and gentle weight washed over my senses, leaving me too embarrassed and nervous to move. I froze as heat flushed through me, and the princess cried against my shoulder. But why? She already cried so much for me that one night. Pride's the reason I went from hating life at the castle to enjoying every day here. She'd always tell me about how good the food was, so I started looking forward to every meal with her. If it wasn't for her, I'd have been terrified of the subordination contract. She's the reason why I have any hope for the future. She accepts me for who I am, smiles at me, needs me. If that isn't a source of strength, what is it? She knew I was in pain and understood my feelings without a word. When Pride brought me the key for the handcuffs that night, I wasn't just heartbroken over the fact that I would never see my mom again. I was lonely there without my mother, worried that she was lonely too, and devastated that there was nothing I could do for her now that she was all alone. All you can do is essentially make her proud, essentially. And like you said, maybe when you get older and you have Pride as your ally and her as queen, maybe you could go see her and do more to help her and the others in the kingdom, essentially. I felt that I was going to be alone forever, that everything in my life would only bring me more pain. But Pride said that she would never hurt me again. She promised that she'd make sure me, Mom, and all the people of the kingdom had reasons to smile. And then she hugged me. Pride knew before I even did just how lonely and hurt I was. She'd seen right through me. She must have been holding back her tears all that time, and that was why they came flooding out that night. Ever since she stayed by my side, prayed for my happiness, called us equals, spoke to me by name, and encouraged me to use her name as well. She greeted me in the morning and offered a fond goodnight when it was time to part ways. Around her, I had moments of true peace and comfort in this place. Moments when my heart didn't feel so heavy. She'd lead me through the library or the gardens, and for a little while, I truly wouldn't feel alone. Pride filled the hole that consumed my heart. So why was she apologizing? She was the one who'd saved me. Oh my god, this is turning out just like All Roads Lead to Doom, where the main character, the main love interest in the game, fall for her, except they might still fall for Tiara. We don't know yet. We haven't even gotten to see her yet. So this is funny. This is funny as how it turned out. I didn't even realize for a moment that I was hugging her back. There was so much I wanted to say, but all the words stuck in my throat. None seemed quite right. All I could do was sit there and hold her and hope that conveyed what I felt. She's probably asleep by this point. Eventually she calmed enough to speak, breath brushing against my ear. If I become a wicked queen, then I want you to kill me. I imagine that shocked him. Her words chilled me to my core. My mind went completely blank. For a while, didn't even believe I'd heard her correctly. But something about those words pierced me right to my heart. Kill her? I would never! No, I couldn't possibly kill her. I could never kill such a kind, wonderful person. She's saying if she becomes an awful person. If she becomes an awful person and an awful queen, then you need to do it. Now, she's not saying you have to do it, no matter what. I sat there trying to sort through my thoughts for so long that Pride actually fell asleep in my arms. Pride? I tried squeezing her gently. She didn't respond. What in the world had the poor girl so scared? How could someone so caring and intelligent possibly think she would grow up into a wicked, cruel queen? If you had the context to this, you would understand. I just couldn't believe it. But if the person who'd shown me such kindness truly feared this fate, if it truly burdened her, then I'll protect you. I whispered it into her shoulder, knowing I'd get no response. Still, that quiet declaration filled me with determination. I hugged her a little closer, pressing that vow between us. By the time I woke up the next morning, Pride was already gone. A doctor came to check on me and recommended that I rest for a few days just to be safe. That was fine with me. I was still processing the previous night. Part of me didn't even believe it was real. Yet Pride's words and warmth and my own determination all still rang fresh and clear in my mind. Pride didn't come to check on me anymore after that. Impatient to see her again, I asked the maid who bowed and introduced herself as Lottie about her when she visited my room. Lottie said Pride felt too awkward about falling asleep in my bed that night to come see me again. The princess ordered us not to inform Her Majesty or His Royal Highness so as not to upset them. There's nothing to worry about, she said with a teasing smile. That was the first moment I really believed that everything that happened that night was real and not a dream. And that it was... Well, I wasn't sure what to call it, but every time I thought back to that night, my chest got all warm all over again, like my fever was coming back. I sure was glad it wasn't, though. Oh, you are so sweet. Despite that, it felt so strange not seeing Pride for several days. The moment I got permission from the doctor, I went back to my etiquette and other lessons. I returned to my training refreshed. Memorizing all the information they gave me felt even easier than before. And it meant I could see Pride again. Butterfly is battered at my... Oh, no! He's falling for you, dude! Oh, boy. I bet she doesn't imagine this happening. Pride herself wore an embarrassed smile, but she quickly gave me her usual grin, and all the nerves and strangeness dissipated. I'm so glad you're better now, she said. Instantly, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Pride didn't bring up that night. I thought better of mentioning it, too. If she wasn't inclined to talk about it, then that was fine by me. It didn't diminish my determination whatsoever. After lunch that day, Pride and I went to see Father. She kept her hands on my shoulders as we approached him, as though bracing or supporting me. These are special circumstances, Father said. You can't mention this to anyone, even in the castle. With that, he handed me a single envelope. I broke the seal, but I had no idea what could be inside. Perhaps an invitation of some sort? Why would I need to keep something like that a secret? I slipped a letter free of the envelope and began to read, eyes widening with every word. I read it over and over, not believing my eyes. It was a letter from someone I was sure I'd never see again. My mom. Dear Stale. I knew her handwriting immediately. It was the same hand that had taught me how to write my name. The only education I got back in town came in this very handwriting. How could this be happening? They told me I could never see her or write to her again. I really thought it was impossible, at least for now. That's why I... Father explained that this letter was Pride's idea, but I hardly even heard him. A torrent of clashing emotions crashed over me. Once every month? I can find out how Mom's doing once every month? I can know for sure that she's okay? And I even got to write back to her on my birthday? This went so far beyond my tenuous little plot to serve as Pride's assistant in the hopes of some sort of good grace far in the future. Even if that plan worked, it would be years before I had any kind of hope. But I'd given up on any other possibility. My hands trembled as I held the letter, the implication of the words on that paper sinking in. My gratitude toward Pride and Father, my love for Mom, and the joy that surged in my heart were too much to contain, and soon they came pouring back out. I never cried so loudly in my life. Tears tracked down my cheeks. I couldn't stop the loud, indecent sobs, but in that moment I didn't even care. Someone stroked my hair, trying to soothe me as I went on crying. I turned and found Pride smiling back at me. Instantly, I pulled her into a hug. Just how many times is this person going to change my life for the better? I was still embarrassed to have Pride and Father see me in such a state, but I was long past the point of bottling any of this up. Mother and Father and I, and your other mother too, we all love you very much, Pride said. I couldn't take any more kindness. I buried my face against her chest as the last strands of control snapped and all of my emotions fluttered out. My voice echoed around the high ceilings of the castle, but all I could think about was how much I owed this person. Just protecting her wouldn't be enough. I had to repay her for everything she'd done for me, even if it took a whole life's worth of work. When I could, I thanked Father, though my voice emerged raw and ragged. Then I shuffled out of the room with Pride at my back. As we exited, she whispered a reminder to hide the letter in my pocket before the guards and maids on the other side of the door could see it. Even when I made it all the way back to my room, I couldn't quite stop crying. The moment I was alone, the tears threatened to well back up, so I pressed my arm over my mouth to contain the sobs. I took out Mom's letter and read it all over again. Dear Stale, those words alone were enough to have tears prickling my eyes anew. I was so glad I'd studied reading and writing at the castle. What I knew before coming here wouldn't have got me much further than my own name. Now I could read how Mom was doing and how the townspeople were helping her. She said she was so happy to be able to write to me, and she'd be counting the days until she got to hear from me again. She wrote of her gratitude to His Royal Highness for allowing this, and asked me to stay happy and healthy. Between every other line, the words, I love you, appeared over and over again. I read that letter what felt like dozens of times, wiping my eyes at the bottom of my shirt and sniffling as I went. When I held the paper close to my face, I could even catch faint traces of Mom's scent on the sheet. It really is, Mom, I thought, as the reality hit me once again. It took a long time before I could finally tear myself away from the letter, but I knew I had to hide it eventually. No one else could see it, or I'd lose this precious point of contact. As I searched, voices drifted into my room. Whatever are we supposed to do? The princess's selfishness is maddening. What? What selfishness? What? The voices were coming from the window. My room sat one floor below Pride's. From my window, I could look down at the path that led out from the garden and stretched to the front door. Now I perched beside that window, covering my mouth with my hands to keep extra quiet. Are you sure we should be discussing this outside of the castle? The instructor told me that neither Her Highness nor her younger brother are studying in their bedrooms, so there's no need to worry. But do keep your voice down. If you spoke so loudly, you'll be overheard by someone. I could just barely pick up the hushed conversation. One of them called Pride selfish again, then their voices lowered. As much as I strained my ears, I couldn't hear them after that. Something about the situation didn't sit right, though. With my handcuffs gone, an idea sprang to mind. For the first time in a long time, I called on my power, teleporting to a bush out in the garden that I hoped was closer to the speakers. As soon as I landed, the conversation sharpened. Someone remarked confidently that no guard would ever be foolish enough to turn them in, even if they did overhear something. Apparently, a small group had gathered, including the two louder voices I just overheard. Only one of the voices sounded at all familiar. But I clung to that one, searching my memory. I strongly opposed those special measures, yet the princess and his royal highness gave me orders, so I must keep it all a secret. I'm sure you made every effort, Prime Minister Gilbert. What? Dude! You gotta tell the king this. You gotta tell the princess consort this. However, should we take this as a sign that the crown princess is still unable to resist indulging her every whim? Yes, it's truly unfortunate. I had heard rumors of her newfound maturity ever since her power manifested, but it sounds as if she'd been dragging Prince Dale all around the castle since his arrival, and she even forced him to run when he was unwell. Well, she did not know he was unwell! Dude, ever think that maybe she did not know that he was hiding it? Ever think of that? Perhaps she's jealous of her younger brother's already apparent prowess in the studies? Gilbert? It was the Prime Minister. I'd seen him with Father just the other day. It took all my self-control not to leap out of that bush and confront his lies right there and then. His Royal Highness struggles to refuse requests from the princess. In this instance, he didn't hesitate to agree to her special request. I just regret that I was unable to convince him of my concerns. Now, what is so wrong about letting him have some kind of contact with his mother? Surely that would get him to work even harder for the royal family now that he's able to even get into any kind of contact with her. Prime Minister, there's no need for you to blame yourself. He's right. Though she's the daughter of the Prince Consort, this raises concerns for her eventual ascension to the throne. Well, that's why it's our job to protect and assist the members of the royal family. Princess Pride is still so young. I'm sure she will grow into the role along the way. You're certainly open-minded, Prime Minister Gilbert. It's no mystery why you were chosen for your title at such a young age. Please, you flatter me. However, the royal family must serve the people of the kingdom. For the Prince Consort to bend to his daughter's every whim and impulse, well, that depends. If the impulses and whims are okay for the kingdom, then yes, that's fine for him to do. But if they were selfish and cruel and everything, then yes, it would be concerning. But as far as we know, they're not. It makes it seem as though the monarchy has nothing better to do than indulge a little girl, wouldn't you agree? This must stay a secret, but Prince Dale is also facing rather disgraceful treatment. The boy is a commoner, yes, but the princess looks down on him and has been quietly finding ways to harass him almost every day. What? Okay, we know that's not true. My hands trembled with rage. I couldn't believe just how he just kept going with those blatant lies. Pride had never once harassed me, yet he spoke with such authority that everyone seemed to believe him. However, even Prince Dale's teacher has recognized the boy's extreme wisdom for his age. He won't accept what we have to say uncritically, though he already appears to harbor concerns over Princess Pride's future as the queen. It pains me to see such a smart boy trapped in a situation like that. Unbelievable. Even young Prince Dale can see it. Is this in the game and it's just not working? Because, I don't know. If only His Royal Highness and Her Majesty would take notice as well. If my proposed national special power registration becomes law, we will finally have a way to know what powers the people of this kingdom possess. Just locating Prince Steel for his rumored teleportation power took the work of many soldiers and quite a considerable amount of taxpayer money. Such expenses could be avoided if this kingdom had a system of organization. Murmurs of agreement sounded all around, but I'm still the Prime Minister, even if Her Majesty can't say no to her beloved husband, and even if the husband can't help but spoil his eldest daughter, who doesn't yet have the character required of a crown princess. I intend to support them all until the end. Oh, and of course, this conversation must remain between us for the good of the kingdom. Well, I mean, to be completely fair, the idea of having some kind of organization for the people of the kingdom when it comes to powers would benefit the kingdom, but the way he's going about doing all this and smearing the name of the princess is not a good look. I peeked between the bushes then and caught a glimpse of Gilbert's face. The people around him nodded, but I could see the cunning smirk beneath his smile. With those final words, Gilbert and the others dispersed in different directions. I teleported back to my room, then snuck back to the window to get a look at the group. A few of them looked familiar, but I didn't have many names. They were just people I'd seen around the castle here and there. I can't let this go. I yearned to dash out of my room and tell Mother and Father everything I just heard. Gilbert and the group who shared his ideals would all be sentenced to death for defamation of the monarchy, or so I hoped. Otherwise, they might get away with continuing to spread their horrible lies, but what could I do? No one would believe me no matter what I told them. Dude, bring it up to them and they can keep an eye on things. Even if they don't outright believe you right away, it would still give them some kind of pause, because you have given them no reason so far since you got there that you would even try something like this. Mother and Father would definitely trust Gilbert over me, but still, the special measures he'd mentioned had to be the letters I was exchanging with Mom. Gilbert didn't seem to mind flagrantly disobeying the order to keep quiet about those, and lying on top of that to make it sound like something nefarious. Worst of all, that whole group seemed to believe him. Despite Gilbert's decree to keep the information secret, rumors would surely swirl. They might even make it out of the castle and into the town. Pride had given me everything. Now these gossips wanted to make it sound like she was the villain? From both inside the castle and outside, Pride, Father, and even Mother would take a hit to their reputations. I hadn't yet met Mother, but Father was such a kind man, and Gilbert intended to tarnish both of them along with Pride. My blood boiled at the mere suggestion. If I become a wicked queen, why had she suggested that? Who could possibly make a better queen than her? No matter what people like Gilbert peddled, I refused to believe it. But again, what could I do? The adults wouldn't listen to anything Pride or I had to say. They would surely listen to Gilbert over two kids. Dude, just tell them what you overheard. Even if they don't outright believe you right away, it would still give them some kind of thing to keep an eye out for, at the very least. Because why would you make that up? You have no reason to make that up. Because, like you said, who would believe a kid? Why would you make something like that up? Because you have no reason to go against the Prime Minister. You have no reason to. You just got those letters from your mother. Why would you risk messing that up? Of course they could believe you. Then the kind, intelligent girl who cried in anguish over the grief of others, the girl who was victim of awful rumors, would get crushed by wicked adults like Gilbert with his eloquent words and good reputation. Neither me nor Pride could do much against that, especially with me being newly adopted into this family. I didn't have a reputation or social standing or fancy words. I didn't have anything. I could study, but that wouldn't be enough. I could build up my reputation, learn to read and write, hone my understanding of others, but that wouldn't do it either. Even if I ensured Pride, Father, Mother, and Princess Tiara all loved me and saw me as a good and dutiful son and brother, that wouldn't stop Gilbert's plan. No, I had to do more than that. I had to become the most cunning, calculated person in the entire kingdom. I had to learn to manipulate people's hearts to earn their trust. I had to make the whole castle, the whole kingdom, love the version of me I sold them. Potentially, I had to become someone I wasn't. But it would all be worth it if I thwarted Gilbert. That's why he's acting like the way he was when it was still Pride's point of view. Okay, that explains it. Pride didn't need to follow in my footsteps. She was perfect as she already was, innocent and warm-hearted. As long as she stayed like that, the kingdom would someday flourish under her rule. I just had to learn to be convincing enough for the both of us, and then some. I had heard Gilbert possessed the power of eternal youth, which meant he would always be around even once Pride and I had grown. Uh-oh. That meant I needed to enact my schemes before Pride took over the throne. As a steward, I'd have the power to chase him out of the kingdom no matter what his lackeys said. Raising my reputation would not only remove Gilbert, but it would raise Pride's status as well once I served beside her in earnest. I wish Mom knew what Pride was like too, I thought, as I took out her letter again. I skimmed through it once more, searching for the section where she wrote about the prince consort. So Mom knows that Father was the one who gave her permission to write a letter, but she doesn't know that Pride orchestrated the entire thing. I need to include that in my birthday letter. I'll tell her all sorts of things about Pride, too. Then I scanned a little further along, and my eyes caught on the words, I love you. Mother, Father, and I, and your mom, too, we all love you very much. That was what Pride had said to me, but now it is my turn to return that love. Don't worry, I'll make sure you're safe. I swore I'll protect your gentle voice, your smile, your heart, every wonderful thing about you, Pride. Promise that as queen, she'd ensure all the people of the kingdom, including me and Mom, were happy. But I would ensure she was happy, too. Whether she was my crown princess, my older sister, or just a girl I knew, I'd protect her from adults like Gilbert no matter what. If I had to corrupt myself to do that, so be it. But I would never allow her pure heart to be tainted the same way. It wasn't just a promise, it was a vow. My name was Stale Royal Ivy. I was the crown princess's younger brother-in-law and the steward of the next generation. I existed to fulfill those duties and serve as Pride Royal Ivy's side. Starting right then, I existed only for her. Okay, I think I'm gonna end this off here. I'll see you guys in the next video.